Early in the war, German tank crews laughed when they first encountered the American M4 Sherman. Its thin armor and high profile made it seem inferior.
On paper, German tanks were superior. Thicker armor, bigger guns, longer engagement ranges.
Then something changed. Shermans didn't arrive alone. They arrived in numbers.
While German tanks broke down or ran out of fuel, Shermans kept moving. They were easy to repair.
Easy to replace.
By 1945, German crews no longer laughed. They understood the truth. The Sherman was not. German commanders began to notice a pattern. Shermans rarely fought alone. They operated as part of a larger.
German doctrine favored long-range tank duels. The Americans refused to fight that way. Shermans flanked.
Whenever German armor concentrated, American aircraft appeared. The Sherman did not need to destroy every enemy tank.
Shermans moved faster, repaired faster, and redeployed faster. German tanks were powerful, but once disabled, they often stayed that way. Behind every Sherman stood factories, supply lines, and fuel depots that never stopped. American doctrine valued crew survival. A destroyed Sherman could be replaced. A trained crew could not. German tank crews were difficult to replace. Every loss reduced experience and combat effectiveness permanently.
The Sherman was never meant to fight alone. It was designed to work with everything else.
In cities, German armor lost its advantage. Narrow streets and close coordination turned the Sherman into a lethal urban weapon.
One Sherman was not impressive. 10 were dangerous. 100 made resistance impossible.
German tanks often waited without fuel. Shermans rarely stopped. Supply decided movement, and movement decided battles.
The Sherman improved constantly. Better armor, better guns, better tactics. Adaptation mattered more than perfection.
In Normandy, Germany learned the truth. Superior tanks could not defeat superior systems.
German officers began to understand. The Sherman itself was not the threat. Everything behind it was.
Every exchange favored the Allies. Losses that crippled Germany barely slowed America.
German forces grew exhausted. Shermans no longer inspired fear, only inevitability.
By 1945, Shermans rolled through territory once thought unreachable.
The myth of the death trap faded. The Sherman had done exactly what it was designed to do.
Germany did not lose to a single tank. It lost to numbers, reliability, coordination, and time, and the Sherman carried all of it forward.
By late 1944, momentum itself had become a weapon. German defenses collapsed, not because they were weak.
German units were forced to retreat, not because they lost every fight, but because they could not afford to win slowly. Time now belonged to the Allies. This was no longer just a battlefield contest. It was industrial warfare. American factories fought German armor as much as soldiers did. The label death trap no longer mattered. What mattered was outcome, and the outcome was decided not by fear, but by results. History would later debate armor thickness and gun caliber. But those who fought the war understood the truth. Every destroyed tank became a lesson. The Sherman was not built to dominate duels, but to survive long enough for victory to compound. German veterans later admitted the mistake. They judged the Sherman as a single machine, not as part of an entire war-making system. For every Sherman lost, 2 more appeared. For every German tank destroyed, the gap widened. Replacement speed became the true measure of power.
American tank crews trusted their machine not because it was invincible, but because it would get them home. Reliability built confidence, and confidence shaped outcomes.
Constant pressure eroded German tactical flexibility. Every engagement felt like borrowing time that could not be repaid.
American doctrine was not theoretical. It moved, adapted, and corrected itself in real time. The Sherman was its most visible expression. By the war's final months, German crews no longer dismissed the Sherman. They respected what it represented: inevitability. Victory did not come from a single breakthrough, but from constant forward motion. The Sherman never stopped arriving, never stopped advancing. As Allied forces closed in, the outcome became unavoidable. The Sherman was no longer a question. It was the answer.
German defensive lines no longer broke suddenly. They cracked slowly, relentlessly, under constant
German units discovered there was no time to regroup. When one engagement ended, another began almost immediately. Key road junctions fell one by one. Wherever Shermans appeared, supply routes were cut and retreat paths narrowed.
Once momentum shifted, collapse accelerated. German command struggled to react faster than Allied advances reshaped the battlefield.
Columns of Shermans advanced day and night. There were no pauses, no dramatic stops, only steady movement forward.
Wir können hier nicht bleiben. Wir sind umzingelt.
Ein Rückzug bedeutet den Verlust des gesamten Sektors, Herr General.
As Allied forces advanced, the battlefield itself seemed to shrink. German forces were compressed into smaller and smaller pockets. Even after days of constant fighting, Shermans remained operational. Crews refueled, rearmed, and moved on. Morale faded as reality set in. Shermans no longer represented a tactical challenge, but an unavoidable future. By the time the front reached Germany itself, the outcome was clear. The Sherman had carried Allied power all the way to the end.
As Allied forces crossed into Germany, the Sherman became a familiar sight on roads once thought
German resistance continued, but without illusion. Crews fought knowing the outcome, driven more by duty than belief. Rivers that once slowed armies now became brief obstacles. Sherman units crossed quickly, supported by engineers and overwhelming firepower. German cities faced Allied armor with little protection left. The Shermans advanced carefully, street by street, without celebration. Final German counterattacks were fierce but brief. Shermans absorbed the shock and continued forward without pause.
For American crews, victory was not measured in destroyed tanks, but in survival.
German high command could no longer deny reality. The war was lost not to inferior machines, but to superior systems.
From villages to cities, from roads to fields, Shermans were everywhere. Their presence alone reshaped the battlefield.
As the final days approached, fighting became fragmented. Shermans moved cautiously, knowing the end was close.
When the war finally ended, the Sherman stood not as a symbol of fear, but of endurance.
When the fighting stopped, silence felt unfamiliar. The battlefield that once roared.
Soldiers walked past wrecks and ruins, measuring victory not in territory gained, but in lives spent.
Years later, veterans would remember the Sherman not as a perfect machine, but as a dependable companion that brought them home.
Credits. As time passed, stories simplified. The Sherman became labeled a failure by those who never fought inside one. Comparisons ignored context. The Sherman was judged against heavier tanks, without acknowledging the strategy it served or the war it helped win. During the Cold War, narratives shifted again. Power became associated with singular superiority, not systems or endurance.
Many forgot the real lesson. Wars are not won by the strongest weapon alone, but by what can be sustained, replaced, and coordinated.
The battlefield had already delivered its verdict. The Sherman worked because it aligned with reality, not theory.
Modern historians began revisiting old assumptions. Data replaced anecdotes, and context replaced caricature.
The truth became clearer with time. The Sherman was never meant to be the best tank. It was meant to help win a war, and it did.
The Sherman's legacy was not its armor or gun, but the doctrine behind it. It represented a philosophy where coordination...
Modern armies still reflect the Sherman's lesson. Reliable systems, mass production, and joint operations continue to shape how wars are fought.
Success in war is not measured by perfection, but by results. The Sherman delivered results consistently.
The idea of the Sherman as a death trap fades when examined honestly. What replaces it is a story of endurance, teamwork, and strategic clarity.
Germany did not lose because it built machines.